We're ready for the start. They're off.
Welcome in, everybody. It's Express Bet First Call. Jeff Siegel, Jeremy Plonk with First Bet and Express Bet. Jeff, we've got a big weekend of racing, and we've got a 2-year-old champ back on the track.
Corniche coming to the top of the stretch with the lead of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. A Giant Game is closing on the outside. Now moving up right alongside of Corniche as they come to the final furlong. Corniche with something left. Giant Game off the rail. Papa Cap trying to split those two, but it's Corniche. He's just too good. Corniche wins the Breeders' Cup Juvenile.
And as we look ahead to this weekend's racing, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner is back in the Amsterdam on Sunday at Saratoga, Jeff. But as we've got a lineup of racing from Saratoga, Del Mar, and the Maryland Jockey Club at Laurel Park, should be a great weekend.
Sure, certainly should, especially with the 3-year-olds you mentioned, Corniche coming back. And he left last year as an undefeated Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner and champion, missed the spring and half the summer. I don't know where he's at, and I don't know how good he really is. If you look back and try to, interpret his form and look back at who he was beating and how he was doing it. So I'm really interested in seeing Corniche. And then the big race of the week, obviously, is the Jim Dandy, because the 3-year-old division is so wide open still. And we're going to find out. This is kind of like a replay of the Preakness, but man, that's going to be a really great race as we head on into the late summer and trying to figure out who the best 3-year-old in the country is.
We should have led with the Preakness. And we get the big rematch there instead of Corniche. But look, it's always great to have a champion back, especially a 2-year-old, because they always emit so much promise to the future. And with Corniche, we were denied that this spring and into the early part of the summer. Now we get to see what he's got, and exciting times. And Saratoga is where you launch many a career. We'll see if he can launch the second act of his career on Sunday in the Amsterdam. But our racing action here on the First Call podcast includes 8 stakes races around the country. As we talked about, Saratoga, Del Mar are going to take the lion's share of it, but it's a big weekend at the Maryland Jockey Club. Laurel Park on Saturday. Jeff's got the Summer Sizzlers in July. Third weekend of racing with multiple stakes races during the month of July. 5 stakes races coming up on the Saturday card. The Deputed Testimony and Open Company. The Ben's Cat, which is our Express Bet race of the week. Be sure to get the Express Bet newsletter in your email inbox every week. You'll get my analysis of the Ben's Cat. And the Start in Askra, which is going to be our first handicapping chore of 8 this weekend. The Start in Askra, the race you wanted to spotlight, Jeff. And tell us why you're looking at this race on the card at Laurel Park. It goes as race number 7 on Saturday.
I'm really curious to see how Super Love performs in stakes competition. He's a 3-year-old colt by Super Saver. He's a Maryland bred, obviously eligible to start in Askra, and he's won all 3 of his races. The first 2 he won in workmanlike fashion. He won Mocha's Maiden, came back and won a first level allowance, which was fine. Didn't run particularly fast. Buyers in the low 70s. And then in his most recent start, he just absolutely freaked, earned a 91 buyer number, won by almost 9, leaving his previous form far behind. And now I'm looking at Super Love and thinking, well, maybe he's going to be a pretty good 3-year-old sprinter and maybe a mainstay on that circuit, maybe a dominant mainstay. But he's got to go through some nice seasoned horses in the Start in Askra. And I'm really interested to see how Super Love performs at Laurel on Saturday.
Dave Rodman with a call of his allowance win back on June 19th. Let's listen in.
Super Love's pouring on the speed. Super Love heads it by 2 lengths now. Super Love tries to break away toward the quarter pole. About a 3-length lead on Golden Eyes and second. Gemologist on the outside in third. Synergy Star is fourth. Free Square fifth. Zen Pie sixth. And Super Love turns into the stretch. A 5-length lead. Super Love is running away from them. Super Love under a steady drive. A furlong left to go. Now 6 in front. Super Love and a super-looking win. This colt is 3 for 3. The Super Saver colt, Super Love. Super Love flashing home on Father's Day with a 7-length score. Golden Eyes the second.
What a dominant performance there. And maybe you can hone in on Super Love when you're looking at the multi-race wagers on Saturday at Laurel Park. The hitting splits in July, $100,000 given away by First Bet and Express Bet during the month of July. That all sadly comes to an end on Sunday at the end of the month, but not before we give away more than $30,000 this weekend in hitting splits beginning Friday at Del Mar with $5,000 in the late pick 4. The Maryland Jockey Club, their big card, the late pick 5 on Saturday has a $2,000 hit and split. We've got a $10,000, and I say $10,000 with emphasis, hit and split in the late pick 4 Saturday at Saratoga. This means if you hit the late pick 4 at Saratoga on Saturday, you'll split your share of not only the pari-mutuel winnings, but your share of $10,000 with just other players on the Express Bet and First Bet platforms who also win the pick 4. This could be a massive return in bumping up your payout in the late pick 4. But those $2,000 hit and splits, nothing to sneeze at either. Laurel Park's late pick 5 on Saturday. And also the Adios card at the Meadows. Harness racing fans, we've got one of those $2,000 late pick 4 hit and splits for the Adios program at the Meadowlands. Of course, a variety of those on Saratoga, Del Mar, and Laurel on Sunday as well. $5,000 at Saratoga, $5,000 at Del Mar, $2,000 at Laurel. The late pick 4s on Sunday, certainly races that you want to dial in on. Jeff, pick 4 hit and splits at Laurel Park there. I mean, can you single your play in there? Is this a horse that you want to lean on that hard?
I think I'd have to, because the other races are open. The stakes competition at Laurel on Saturday is very contentious. Super Love, to me, is the kind of horse that, you know, he'll probably win if he runs back that last race. I don't think anybody in here can run that fast, but he better, because there's some solid season type horses in the race. And you either look, you got to single somewhere, and if you single him, and you decide, well, maybe he's vulnerable, who do you use? You got 3 or 4 that you may want to have to use, and you don't want your ticket to, you know, mushroom like that. So be right or be out, but I'm going with Super Love. I'm going to assume that as a lightly raced 3-year-old who's getting better with every race, and he's had sufficient time in between races, I think you're going to see Super Love come back and pretty much run the same type of race, which is good enough to win.
For a little more help at Laurel, again, I've got the Express Bet Race of the Week. It's posted at news.first.com and on the blog section at expressbet.com, and also in your email inbox with that Express Bet newsletter. Little hint, I'm going in the Ben's Cat Stakes heavily towards Jackson Traveler. He's on the turf, but I think he's the fastest horse in there. And I think Jackson Traveler, one you can look at in those hit and split playing at Laurel Park. Let's go next to the Vanderbilt at Saratoga as we set up the Saturday card with the Vanderbilt in race number 8 and the Jim Dandy in race number 9. They go back-to-back on the program, and the Vanderbilt, grade 1 race for the sprinters. And, Jeff, we've got a grade 1 sprinter in here, no question about it, Jackie's Warrior. The rest of the 5-horse challenging brigade, though, I'm not so sure are grade 1 sprint caliber. At 1 to 5 in the morning line, Jackie's Warrior is just going to lay over these, right?
You'd have to think so, even though he's carrying 127 pounds in a handicap, but he should be carrying 30 or more if he really wanted to make it competitive. But they're not going to do that anymore. Those days are gone. In fact, most handicaps are gone. But Jackie's Warrior is coming off a couple of really sharp, easy wins against outclassed runners, and basically it's the same situation. There just isn't anybody back east, or I don't know, maybe anywhere else that can run with him sprinting. So I think Jackie's Warrior will put on an exhibition. I hope he wins and hope he continues on for trainer Steve Asmussen.
Yeah, it's one of those where you're just like saying, like, where's the competition? The last time we saw Jackie's Warrior at Saratoga last summer, he had competition, and what a race it was.
They are at the top of the stretch. Life is good. Room on the inside for Jackie's Warrior. Now here he comes. Here comes Jackie's Warrior up the inside to take over the lead from Life is Good. There's an 1/8 of a mile to the finish. Jackie's Warrior, Life is Good, not done yet on the outside. A 16th to the finish. It's Jackie's Warrior, Life is Good. The two of them will battle it out to the finish in the Allen Jerkins, and it's going to be Jackie's Warrior by a head. Life is Good was second. Farther back, Following Sea was third. And they ran 7 furlongs in 1:21-1.
Jeff, I ask you on this list of horses, where is Life is Good?
Yeah. I think he'd be 1 to 5 himself, you know. But in this race, Jackie's Warrior is going to get another easy chip on the lead. There are horses that have a little speed, but nobody who I don't think is going to try to run with them early.
Right.
I'm intrigued by Willie Boyd. It's maybe complete the exact. I don't know whether that Gulfstream form will transfer to Saratoga, but he looks like a horse who can sit back and maybe pick up the pieces and make the last run. I'm going to assume that Jackie's Warrior will dispose of anything that tries to run with him early. And that's another reason why I think he's going to have an easy race, because I don't think anybody's going to try. It's almost like suicide to do that. So I just think Jackie's Warrior is a sensational sprinter. If you draw a line through his Breeders' Cup sprint, which was just well below his normal form, and he was down on the inside, that deep part of the track that day, I'll give that's part of the excuse for that loss. But if you draw a line through that, there's a lot of ones next to his name. Let's put it that way. And I think Jackie's Warrior continues on, and obviously goes about what he's supposed to do in the Vanderbilt.
New York Traffic, maybe one for the exact. I thought his win at Penn National was pretty nice in the Chocolate Town Stakes, where he beat Barron, who came back and won the Francis Dash. So some decent company line for a race there at Penn National. And New York Traffic with Irad Ortiz, probably not going to offer much value because Irad takes so much money. And so that exacta looks probably on the very short side, the old-fashioned 4-3 there. Jackie's Warrior and New York Traffic. That's the Vanderbilt. We'll take a look next at the Jim Dandy Stakes. Jim Dandy at Saratoga goes as race number 9 on Saturday, grade 2, $600,000. This is the local prep race for the Travers, and there's not many times you say a $600,000 race at Saratoga is a prep for anything. But Jeff, with a field of 5 in here, looking ahead to the $1 million plus Travers Stakes, you have to think some horses are aimed for this weekend, and some horses are aimed for next month in terms of where they want to peak. Just the field of 5, not a lot of fluff in here, though. I mean, obviously, we want to see bigger field sizes, and the Saratoga races this summer have been a dearth in terms of entries for the stakes races. The overnight races are drawing well, but the stakes races are awfully short fields. We've got another short field, but there are 3 bullets to fire in here, with Epicenter and Early Voting renewing their Preakness acquaintances, and then Zandon, who was the morning line favorite for the Kentucky Derby. So an excellent field here. And of course, the last time we saw some of these horses in action, it was a good one in Baltimore.
Epicenter cut the corner in 5th, and they're into the stretch. And it's Early Voting who comes into the final furlong with a 3-length lead. Secret Oath is second. Epicenter is on the rail. Behind that Creative Minister. Then it's Armagnac. It is Early Voting reaching for the wire. Epicenter closing on the inside. Early Voting, Epicenter. Early Voting comes inside and wins it. He wins the Preakness by a length and a half. Epicenter was second.
Now, Jeff, I know we both liked Early Voting in the Preakness. We were both on him pretty early and bullish on him that day. Is he the horse to beat coming back here in the Jim Dandy, or are we going to look somewhere else?
Well, you have to remember Epicenter was one of the reasons why we liked Early Voting, because he was a fresh horse. Yeah. Epicenter was coming off a very hard race just 2 weeks previous in the Derby, where he really laid his body down. He ran second. He certainly ran well. Got caught and nailed in the final 50. By a horse I'm sure that he didn't even see with strength. But yeah. I'm going to lean here, Jeremy, towards Epicenter. Look, I mean, you can make a case for Zandon as well, but this work here on Epicenter tells me that Asmussen is really pointing for this race. He wants to get Epicenter back in the winner's circle after 2 runner-up efforts. This work was a couple of weeks ago, and he looked fantastic, and he was asked to do it. And I think, to me, tells me that Asmussen wants this horse to get back in the winner's circle. It's okay to lose a race. You don't want to lose 2. You don't want to lose 3. And I think Epicenter is spot on. Now, the way Chad Brown's trained Early Voting, he hasn't quite been that aggressive with him, is what I'm trying to say. So I think in this race, where Early Voting, who didn't make the lead in the Preakness when we thought he would, and now Chad knows he doesn't need the lead to win. He could take it if nobody goes. I wonder how aggressive Asmussen and Joel Rosario will be with Epicenter. Do you think maybe he might be sent out of there and try to establish the running and maybe have Early Voting kind of chase him? I don't know, but I do think that I think Asmussen's thinking that Epicenter has to win a race now. There's still championship aspirations for him. You don't want to go 0 for 3 here, even though his form before that was outstanding. I think it's a more important race for Epicenter than it is for early voting. And
Yeah.
Zandon, what has he done wrong? I mean, I liked him in the Derby a lot. He got beat in the Derby, but he's fresh now. He appears to be training very well for Chad, and I wouldn't put it past him, especially if early voting and Epicenter hook up somewhere. So an incredibly intriguing race, and a more important race than most Judah Dandies are, because at this stage, every win on your resume could make a difference.
Yeah, we talked about Cyberknife last week winning the Haskell. I think he became the first 2-time Grade 1 winner in the division. And, this is not a Grade 1 race. It's not going to add to anybody's allure in that respect. But Epicenter's yet to win a Grade 1. He's going to try to add another Grade 2 to his resume. I like the fact that he's in the 2-hole and he's inside here. A lot of times people say, I want the speed on the outside to press. At 1 1/8 at Saratoga with a short run into the first turn over this 9-furlong oval, give me inside speed all day. And I think Joel Rosario will try to take advantage of that. I'm with you. I think he might go to the front here. Early voting's a front-running horse, but not a dead-set speed horse. He's not a runaway sprinter. So I actually think Epicenter, like you say, there's more for them on the line, I think, in this race. They need to kind of wrestle the division back. And look, Jack Christopher fell on his face last week at the Haskell. So where is Chad Brown with his 2 3-year-olds now? It's like, did he think Jack Christopher was his superstar of the 3? And now that bubble has burst a little bit because of the distance. Now he's kind of like working backwards with these horses, but he's only had a couple days to like recalibrate. How cranked up are they? If he thought maybe Jack Christopher was his Travers horse coming out of the Haskell, it's a whole different barn of needs and necessities now. And it's interesting when you got 3 this good. He's got 3 really, really, really good 3-year-olds. But which ones are cranked at the right time? Zandon's probably more talented than early voting. I think early voting was a situational winner of the Preakness and a very good horse. But I think Zandon has more talent. And with Epicenter going up, challenging early voting, I like an Epicenter Zandon exact in here. I think that's the way it's going to run.
Okay, I see your point.
Okay. That was too easy to convince you on that one.
No, I was with you all from the start, really. I ended up with Epicenter. And by the way, you go back to the Preakness, Epicenter did not run badly in that race at all. I know he got beat, but he stayed on, beaten just over a length, whereas early voting got a great trip. I mean, Epicenter was 8th early on. No one expected him to be that far back and have that much to make up, and he still managed to make it close. So I think it's time for Epicenter to get back in the winner's circle.
Well, if you're looking at those Saturday stakes races at Saratoga, be sure to join in the handicapping contest circuit this weekend with Fun in the Sun. The final 5 races on the card at Saratoga, which includes those stakes we talked about, and the first 5 races at Del Mar make up the weekly Fun in the Sun handicapping contest. Just a $25 entry fee. All money is returned back in prizes and in cash throughout the weeks and through the final table on Labor Day weekend. You make 10 $10 win bets in your pari-mutuel account. You keep all your winnings, but if you finish in the top 5 each week, you make your way to the final table, which is coming up on Labor Day Saturday. Weekly seasonal prizes on the line. Be sure to go to expressbet.com. Remember, tournaments not on the First Bet app, only at expressbet.com. Be sure to check out Fun in the Sun. Last 5 at Saratoga, first 5 at Del Mar every Saturday of the summer through Labor Day weekend. To the Bing Crosby we go next at Del Mar. It's the featured sprint race on a card that also includes the San Diego handicap. But the Bing Crosby, $400,000 Grade 1. Jeff, we don't get many Grade 1 sprints in America, and this is one of them. And a big field lining up for the Bing Crosby. We don't get many 10-horse fields in Grade 1 races either, especially on the dirt. So this is a treat, and there's not a standout in the division right now.
No, unlike the sprint at Saratoga, where we've got a 1-to-5 shot, this is a race where if you like somebody, you're going to have a chance to cash a ticket at a decent price. Morning line favorite is number 2, Shaz, at 7-2. And here's a horse that has never won a stakes. In fact, he's only had 4 starts, and his numbers are such where he's no better than half the field. And I just wonder how good Shaz is. I would not take him at a short price. Mm-hmm. You've got some tough, genuine, durable horses in here. I think at 8-1, for example, the Churchill shipper Bad Boss has got a really good look. I think you have to use him somewhere on your ticket. I know Drain the Clock on his best day is very dangerous, although his form looks like it's gone south just a little bit. And then you've got American Theorem, a 5-year-old son of American Pharaoh, who broke his maiden first amount sprinting, and then all of a sudden they decided because he ran second, the American Pharaoh, a distant second behind 8 rings, that he was all of a sudden a route horse, which he's not.
Well, look, Jeff, Derby fever. You're only 3 once, right? You got to try him on the trail, don't you?
Right. And now, finally, they figured out, something. It's a sprinter, and he's a pretty good sprinter. And he's done well, this summer. He's really blossomed not only in the morning, but in the afternoon as well.
Let's take a look at his win in the Triple Bend, where he's going to rematch with 2 others in here. The top 3 from the Triple Bend coming back in Saturday's Bing Crosby.
Here's American Theorem putting in a powerful bid on the outside as they turn for home. And American Theorem is up to put his head in front. Principe Carlo matching strides in the center of the track. Get her number exalted. A 16th to go. American Theorem and Principe Carlo are nose to nose. American Theorem, Principe Carlo will not surrender. Here is the line. American Theorem and Principe Carlo in a heart-stopping conclusion.
Now, Jeff, anytime you come out of a hard race, especially a hard sprint race, you want to know how the horse bounced out of the race, right? I mean, did that race knock out American Theorem? Now, it was May 29th, so they've given the horse some time to come back. Tell us what you see in these works and in the training you've seen at XBTV.
Well, there you see him on the outside. This work was last week. And here's a horse that obviously they don't want him to work fast. You can see him way on the outside under a stranglehold. He was taken wide because he might get too aggressive if he hooked in with the horse on the inside, which was not planned, by the way. And you can see him just under wraps. And then I'm sure the jock was told, don't let him gallop out. I want to say something for the last week. So he's being pulled up to a walk here. And then, jock doesn't do exercise rider don't want to get yelled at. So he's going to pull him up like to a dead stop. Yeah. But this tells me that was a week ago. And I love to see that because you never want to leave your race on the track too close to a race. Mm-hmm. And George Papapadromos, obviously was fearful of that. So he gave him a 5/8 work in 101-1. It could have been in 58 if they let him run. He'd worked in 59 the week before, which was his real tightener. So I love the work pattern here. I like the outside draw for him because he's not that quick, but he can settle and make a run and make his move as he did in the Triple Bend, same thing. And when you're outside there in a race that doesn't have a lot of pace, you can kind of pick your spot. And I think that's what's going to happen. I mean, American Theorem was battling right off the pace in the Triple Bend. I would expect him to see him in the same kind of spot and then go on with it. This race backing up to 3/4, but that's fine. He might even be better at 6 furlongs anyway than 7. So I could see it 4-1 American Theorem. I would be shocked if he didn't run really, really well. Good enough to win, perhaps. But again, I'd also use number 3 Bag Boss on your ticket because he's a lightly raced horse by Speightstown, won his last 2 at Churchill, an overnight company, but he's done it the right way. Numbers are rising with every start, and he is 8-1 in the morning line for Brendan Walsh. So for me, those are the 2 that I'm falling on, trying to beat Chaz, who is the morning line favorite, and drain the clock, who may or may not be as good as he used to be. But it's a really good gambling race, a good, interesting race here, a grade 1, a win and you're in. This is a very critical race for West Coast-based sprinters.
At Del Mar on Saturday, the feature race is the 10th on the card. It's the San Diego Grade 2, $300,000. Comes right on the heels of the sprint race in the Bing Crosby. And I know the Bing Crosby is a Grade 1 and it's worth more cash, but the San Diego, the classic division, that's where the attention is. These are the horses trying to prep for a potential date with Flightline in the Pacific Classic. With Flightline, you never know if he's going to get there or not. So these horses could be auditioning for leadership roles in the Pacific Classic. But if Flightline shows up there, they are supporting cast. But nonetheless, Country Grammar, the Dubai World Cup winner, back on American soil and back in the Bob Baffert barn now. He likely goes favorite in here, I would assume, Jeff. Last year's Kentucky Derby winner through disqualification, Mandaloon, ships west for Brad Cox. Ferrand Giroux gets to keep a common mount for him, and he's moved west. So Mandaloon came to visit him at the old Del Mar. That's not a bad place to spend the weekend.
Usually jockeys get on a plane to ride a horse. I'm not so sure. Just Mandaloon got on the plane so he could, hook up again with his regular rider. But a very difficult race because you've got question marks surrounding where Mandaloun is and how good he is and whether he's lost it or whether he can bounce back. Country Grammar, we have not seen him since he won a $12 million race in Dubai. So, and that was back in March. I'm not sure about this one, Jeremy. I mean, I've watched Country Grammar work, and I haven't been all that impressed. I don't know, maybe he's not that willing in the morning, but he's got a work here. Now, here's Shaz. He's the sprinter. You'd think that Shaz would maybe at least stay with him, but Shaz is on the inside. He's going way easier than Country Grammar, who's being asked and ridden pretty hard and never gets by. And not only does he not get by it to the wire, he doesn't get by to the continuing out to the 7/8 bowl, even though Shaz is being eased up here. And again, Country Grammar under the whip. He's being pressured, galloping out. He can't get by him. Jeremy, is this what you want to see in a horse trying to make his first start after coming back from around the world in his first start since March?
Not for me. I mean, no. And, you look down on the resume and, stats can lie a little bit, but $10 million earner, second in the Saudi Cup, winner of the Dubai World Cup. I feel fairly confident saying this is the worst $10 million earner in the history of racing. I mean, and that's no knock on the horse. I mean, he may go on and do better things, but his resume going into it and what he beat in those races, overseas, there have been, this is not Silver Charm Redux, right? I mean, this is a horse he's made 10 million the easy way. He had to ship, once across the world and stayed from Saudi Arabia to the UAE and stayed there without traveling back and forth. Well campaigned, smartly campaigned, and it's about making money. So again, this is no knock at all on the campaign that they've laid out for him, and he has checked the boxes to the tune of $10 million. I'll take those boxes any day of the week. But I'm not going to fool myself as a handicapper and say, oh my God, there's a $10 million earner in this field. Just circle him and move on. I don't think he stands out over much else in this race. I think he's kind of on the same par with some of the others. And it's not a great classic division right now outside of Flightline in California. Hot Rod Charlie's been shipping around and not back to the West Coast, right? For a race in a while. The Gold Cup, the Hollywood Gold Cup at Santa Anita, we saw There Goes Harvard win it at 8-1. And prior to that, he was like a 2 other than allowance horse, So the division's up for grabs behind Flightline, and we never know if Flightline's going to make it all the way to the September edition this year of the Pacific Classic. It's later in the meet than usual. I don't know. I mean, I don't think Country Grammar is going to warm up Flightline, and I don't think he's going to win this race. I think somebody else will get him in here. I'm still shopping around, and I'm looking for a little bit of help from you. Who might you go with here if you're going to beat Country Grammar?
Yeah, I look at a horse like Royal Ship, and I can't figure him out. He's either really good or you can't find him. He was really good when he won a stakes in Santa Anita 2 races back, and then he was even money in his next race on the basis of that win, and he didn't show up. He finished 3rd in the Hollywood Gold Cup. It was just dull, I thought. But he's trained well since then. He usually does. I could see him bounce back because he's done it before. The one horse that I'm trying to still figure out is Mandolin. I mean, he was really good when he won to Louisiana, I thought. Nothing wrong with his race, even though he got put up via disqualification in the Haskell. Before that one, the Pegasus backed into the Derby because of the disqualification of Medina Spirit. His form was terrific. But then his last 2 races have been pretty lousy, quite frankly. He was beaten off in the Saudi Cup, and then in the Foster, he didn't have to win it, but he didn't have to get beat 9 lengths either. And yet he's here. And I know Brad Cox would like to try to protect his reputation, whatever that might be. I don't think he's going to run him out here in California if he doesn't think he's right. He's breezed him twice since the Churchill Down race to Foster. So if he shows up, I know he's good enough to beat the rest of these. And I don't know whether I should trust Brad Cox on this or not. I'm going to trust him that he's making the right decision. And I might be tempted to lean towards Mandaloun if he's 4-1 or somewhere in that area.
I've been waiting for Parnelli to pop one of these big races for a while. John Scherf, the trainer, he had Express Train, who's the defending champ in this race, and didn't come back to run in it. Parnelli likes Del Mar. He's 4 for 4 in the money, 3 for 4 in the exact. And maybe Parnelli here off a nice allowance win last time out at Santa Anita. He hasn't been in there banging with the big boys lately, right? So maybe he's not knocked out. Maybe he's coming up to the race the right way. I've chased Parnelli for a long time in some of these races. Maybe it can finally be payday for him. And I'm really rooting for, I don't think he plays here, but Senor Buscador, the horse who won the Springboard Mile, my old stopping grounds at Remington Park. He debuted at Remington. He would get a 93 buyer in that race in the Springboard Mile. And there were a lot of people. I know Jay Privman at DRF was high on him on Derby Watch going into his 3-year-old season. That was shortened to just one race and he was sidelined. But his comeback win at Lone Star in a sprint allowance was good enough to kind of set Todd Flincher to send him out to Santa Anita and take their shot with him. Of course, Fincher based in New Mexico. They run a lot at Lone Star in Texas this time of year. But we'll see. Let's see how Senor Buscador plays here on the West Coast. But he looked pretty good as a 2-year-old, and his comeback race wasn't bad at all.
And Todd won a race yesterday at Del Mar with a really nice filly from New Mexico. So that's good to see. And I tell you what, Jeremy, I've seen worse 20-1 shots. I can tell you that. So,
it's a race that seems like something goofy could happen, right? If
no
Mandaloon's not what we think he is,
right,
and Country Grammar is not what he thinks he is, then the rest of them you can kind of shake them up and see what happens. Stiletto Boy's a talented horse, but his best races have all been at Santa Anita. It seems like he's more of a horse for course there at Santa Anita. So something goofy could happen. Why not, Senor Buscador, right? We switch to the Bowling Green now on Sunday at Saratoga. We've got 3 Sunday races to talk to you about here on this week's edition of the First Call podcast. Bowling Green, first of 2 stakes races back-to-back on the Spa program, races 8 and 9 on the card. And in this Bowling Green Stakes, a field of 6. This is kind of what we've seen a lot in these Saratoga graded stakes races. Grade 2, purse of $250,000. Jeff, this is a field where you've got some veterans, and I mean veterans. You got Arklow at age 8, Cross Border at age 8. I thought that Highland Chief was one in here who's just a 5-year-old and is kind of going the right way. Won the Man of War impressively, and his 4th and last time out in the Manhattan didn't look as bad as maybe you thought when a horse like Ed Hamo came back and won the United Nations. The 2nd place finisher came back to win the Grade 1 UN next time. So Highland Chief bounced a little bit last time, but I'm going to give him a shot on the return. Who did you like in the Bowling Green?
Well, speaking of Highland Chief, if you look at this race, I mean, does he not have to fall into the lead? I mean, I know he did that when he won the Man of War. He went 3/4 and 17, but there really isn't a front runner. I guess you could say that maybe L'Imperador on his best day might want to go from the rail, and it's a kind of a weird pace scenario here.
Yeah.
But Arklow, he was really good last year, and then he kind of tailed off. He had a terrible trip in the Del Mar handicap. Really should have won that race, and they got beat a neck in the Turf Cup, and then he would stale in the Classic, and they put him away. Now he's back, and he's been gone for like 9 months.
Right.
I like the way he's been training, though, and I think he's the kind of horse that has run well fresh in the past, and maybe the time off, even at age 8, will be beneficial. This was a bullet work here. 48 breezing, fastest of 55. You can see how easily he's going. He's sharp. He's eager. He's feeling good. He looks like a horse that's ready to resume his career. Sometimes it's tough to get 8-year-olds to win off a layoff because you don't want to work them too hard, and you usually leave something to work with and race them into shape. And it might be the case here for Brad Cox. But Brad hits at 27% with layoff runners. Here's a horse who's got a history of running well fresh. I know he's good enough to win on his best day. So I went with Arklow on top, but Highland Chief to me, if he were to run back to either one of his last 2 races, again, both triple-digit buyer performances, he certainly has a very good look here.
Cross Border, 6 for 8 lifetime on this turf course, including a win in last year's Bowling Green. He's the defending champ. Rock Emperor, we didn't mention that, Chad Brown trainee. Late runner, was runner-up in this race last year, but Rock Emperor comes from well off of it, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of pace in here. Never say never with a Chad Brown, Flavian Pratt charge, but the pace scenario certainly does not favor Rock Emperor. If he is to win this race, he will have done it the hard way. certainly without any pace help. But Arklow, the veteran, could be a big weekend for Brad Cox if you've got anything to say about it. You got Arklow here, and then on the West Coast, you got Mandaloun in the San Diego. Sunday's co-feature at Saratoga is race number 9, the Amsterdam Stakes, Grade 2, $200,000 sprint. These are straight 3-year-olds in the Amsterdam. It's the prep for the Alan Jerkins, the race that's the undercard sprint feature on the Travers Day program at Saratoga each year. The Alan Jerkins, also a 7-furlong race. This one at 6.5, so it's a true prep here to get him tuned up, Jeff. And this is a good field of 9. We've been a little bit tough on Saratoga with their stakes field, so we've got a salute here. Nice field size here and a good quality field that we've got looking at it. You know, Jack Christopher going last week in the Haskell certainly helped the prospects of the Amsterdam. Had Jack Christopher been in this race, certainly fewer would have shown up. But we do have last year's 2-year-old champion Corniche. We talked about him at the head of our First Call podcast this week. He's kind of the headline name horse in this race, but how do you see him matching up, Jeff? He's been away since November and back to the sprint game.
Well, the one good thing about Corniche is he's found a sprint that doesn't have a lot of speed in it. In fact, I don't know how he avoids not being on front. I mean, I can't. I mean, Pinehurst coming in from California, we know him. He's a decent sort of sprinter, but he's not that quick. I like him backing up. I think that's what he wants to do. But the rest of these horses, Jeremy, I just don't know who will run with them. And yet, I'm not sure where Corniche is either. I know he was good last year as a 2-year-old, even though I'm not sure the form really held up. I mean, beating Papa Cap doesn't prove a whole lot. And Papa Cap himself, who was behind Corniche in those races, he hasn't won a race since August of last year. So I don't know.
He's been inhaling the fumes of Jack Christopher lately.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's Corniche. I mean, let's take a look at his most recent workout and try to figure out where he's at. Now, he'd worked with Nest the previous week, and Nest handled him pretty easily. I don't hold that against him. But here you have him on the outside, and that colt on the rail has got some speed. He's not a high-quality colt, but he can run a little bit. But I was kind of hoping to see Corniche kind of go by him, and Jeremy, he never does.
No, and like I said, you mentioned the horse on the inside, Provocateur. He was 3rd in the Woody Stevens after setting the pace in there, and he won the Hutchison Illicit Stakes down at Gulfstream during the course of the winter-spring meet there. But you would expect Corniche, if he is the horse. And look, this is a $1.5 million horse. This isn't a horse, Corniche, who just kind of got good and was the early progressor and won a Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He was meant to be good from the start. They spent $1.5 million on him. He ran the table in 3 starts last year, but that Breeders' Cup Juvenile has turned out to be bad juju. There has not been much come out of it to be successful as 3-year-olds. It's going to go down as one of the weaker editions of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile as far as the field goes, top to bottom in the history of that event. So Corniche has to prove himself all over again. And Jeff, forgive me if I think the Amsterdam feels a lot like the San Diego, a race we talked about early in our First Call podcast this week, because you've got the horse coming back from Dubai, Saudi, the double trip to the Middle East, like Country Grammar. That's Pinehurst in this spot. What is he going to do on the comeback? He's down on the fence. And then you got Corniche, who was like last year's news, but really hasn't done anything since. And that's Mandaloun, what we see in the San Diego. Right. So you've got 2 name players, 4 name players, 2 in each race, coming off of similar circumstances. And we said the San Diego seemed like it could be ripe for a big price if just those 2 dominoes fall. And it's kind of the same thing here. If Pinehurst doesn't run from the rail and Corniche doesn't develop from 2 to 3, that workout certainly did not indicate that he's screaming to break out here. Then something goofy could happen in here. I mean, my Prankster, Papa Cap, these are solid horses that aren't going to be 50 to 1, that kind of deal like that. They're going to be single-digit horses in behind a couple of the favorites, but I guess they are the natural spots you go to next. But what about Akrativ, the horse for Chad Brown, just with the 1 career start? Chad, with these practical jokes, he's had so much success with them. Typically at Belmont, the practical jokes have run so well. This one broke his maiden at Belmont in the debut, and now goes right to the stakes ranks. Pretty bold move by Chad.
91 buyer number puts him right in there with a lot of these horses, and that was just his first start. And He has the style for 6.5 furlongs. He just won at Belmont at that trip. He can settle and make a run. Yeah. And he's a gelding, so it's not like they have to win a race like this to make him a stud or anything.
Right.
I mean, usually with geldings, I always say with geldings, you have one goal as a trainer and an owner, and that is to keep them running until age 9, because to keep them healthy, don't do too much too early.
Keep them in the game,
I mean, just bide your time, and the world's not going to end tomorrow, and you got a lot of racing. And yet, Chad must think enough of this horse to put him right into this race. And it might be a combination of I think he's good enough, or maybe I don't think the horses are that good. I've seen Corniche train. I'm not afraid of him. So you could run in the non-winners at 2 just as easily and build him up. But the fact that he's in this race, again, if you trust the trainer and his evaluation, he knows the horse a lot better than I do. And the horse was heavily backed first time out. It was no secret. He did it the right way. Why not? I mean, I don't know what price he's going to be, but I'm telling you, that's the one I'd be afraid of, because he's like the X factor. We don't know how good he is. The other ones, they are what they are. So,
and again, we've got that $10,000 hit and split on the late pick 4 on Saturday. Sunday, there's still a $5,000 late pick 4 hit and split. So keep an eye on this race. The Amsterdam is one that could get a little volatile and that you want to use some bullets for. I think you want to save and spread a little bit in the Amsterdam if you're playing in those hit and split late pick 4s at Saratoga coming up on Saturday. Also part of that mix will be our final race to look at this week. To Del Mar we go for the Eddie Reed Stakes on Sunday, July 31st. The Eddie Reed on the turf, grade 2 company here. And the Eddie Reed is at 1 1/8 miles. They'll start out of the chute, make the elbow turn, and then one lap around the course proper for a purse of $250,000. And Jeff, big field here. Field sizes in the Del Mar Stakes races have been fabulous to start the meet. And we've got a capacity dozen lining up here for the Eddie Reed. Good group. Your thoughts?
Well, the first thing I'm looking at is Beyond Brilliant, who is 2 for 2 at Del Mar. I think that's important. He does look like the controlling speed. He's a kind of horse that can take advantage of that. And I really think that if he's ready, and the works look really, really good for a horse who generally does work well in the morning. So I think he's the kind of horse that can run well fresh. That's the one that jumped off at me. Now, I will say this. Speed has not been doing well at Del Mar. Now, what have we had, like 4 days or something,
Right.
So it's too early to really say that. But Beyond Brilliant is going to be the controlling speed here, and I'm not sure. Maybe you might get some pressure from Tango on the outside of him, but he's going to have his chance to wire the field, and we'll see if he can take advantage of it. He certainly did when he won the Whittingham in his last start, and that was back in late April with Santa Anita.
Yeah, and he took on Master of Foxhounds that day, and they're back, and they're both well drawn here in the Eddie Reed, right? With that elbow start, inside posts are very good, especially in a 12-horse field, because they're going to make that hard elbow left, and then so it's almost like 3 turns, and you really get a nice bounce and advantage having the inside draw. So Master of Foxhounds, Beyond Brilliant in the 1 and 3 hole. Let's go back and look at their last matchup you mentioned in the Whittingham.
Front running Beyond Brilliant, who takes him into the far turn with a 1.5 length lead. Master of Foxhounds now pushed to get closer, cuts it back down to 3/4. Gold Phoenix has been in a good spot every step of the way. Greg Dar is next. Then Dean Martini, Majestic Eagle. Dicey Mochara has trailed throughout. Beyond Brilliant is the leader. Master of Foxhounds within a length second. Gold Phoenix and Greg Dar inside the 8th pole, and Beyond Brilliant keeps on going. Master of Foxhounds has not surrendered. He's trying him one last time, but Beyond Brilliant is just too strong, and he takes him all the way in the Charles Whittingham. Master of Foxhounds was second best.
So in that $5,000 late pick 4 hit and split Sunday at Del Mar, will it be a single for Mr. Siegel with Beyond Brilliant? I kind of give Master of Foxhounds a little bit of a shot in here. I love the rail. JJ Hernandez aboard. But Beyond Brilliant looks awfully tough, Jeff. Is he single material? Because if you can single in a 12-horse field, you're going to separate from the pack.
Well, I will say this. I would consider singling Beyond Brilliant, but I would also consider backing up with Master of Foxhounds, because from the rail, he is going to draft into the greatest spot of all time. And if Beyond Brilliant doesn't get the trip, and he did win the Hollywood Derby over this course and distance last November. He's going to have to be a little bit better now, as you think he might be as a 4-year-old now that he was then. But if Beyond Brilliant comes up a tad short, Master of Foxhounds is going to be right in his wheelhouse. And I remember when he won the San Marcos, this horse, way back in February of 2021, I thought, okay, here's a Warfront colt. He's going to really develop here for D'Amato, who's a terrific grass trainer, and he's going to go on with it. But he hadn't won since. He seems like he runs well. He just can't seal the deal. So I think he's going to have every chance to get back in the winner's circle and break that losing streak. And I would suggest that he is the one that Beyond Brilliant has to fear most. There are others in here that are obviously good enough, but nothing that I think can. I mean, I don't know how good Hong Kong Harry is. He looks really good for. And I think D'Amato's got 4 in here, so I'm not sure what's going to happen.
Chad Brown of the West, as you said.
Exactly. But there's a horse who's undefeated now since coming over from England, and he was an okay horse there, but he's obviously, like many of the Phil D'Amatos, better here than he was there.
Yeah,
he's got a really good turn of foot. He's won in a mile and 1/8. He's got good stalking style. I would, if I'm going to spread this race and try to beat Beyond Brilliant, I mean, Hong Kong Harry's going to have to be on my ticket somewhere as well. But it's a really good race, and it's a good gambling race again, because there are many horses in here that have a race or two that puts him right there. And if you can gamble on a race of 10, 12 to 1 and find one like that, you go for it, or at least you throw them in your ticket, and even as a backup, you want to have them. But the 3 that I mentioned, Beyond Brilliant, Master of Foxhounds, and Hong Kong Harry, would have to be on there somewhere.
We're in agreement on that. The final big stakes of the weekend, Sunday night, get you out for the weekend in the Eddie Reed. So that's going to put a wrap on this week's edition of the Express Bet and First Bet First Call podcast. We took you through 8 stakes races around the country, starting at the Maryland Jockey Club at Laurel Park with a start in Askra, where Jeff's on a hot shot up and coming class riser. To Saratoga, we looked at the Vanderbilt and the Jim Dandy, who might move towards the Traverse Stakes. At Del Mar, it was the Sprinters and the Bing Crosby, and a head-scratching edition of the San Diego that could go several different directions. And a trio of races on Sunday at Saratoga. We looked at the Bowling Green for the Turfers, the Amsterdam for the 3-year-old Sprinters, and the return of last year's 2-year-old champ Corniche. And we wrapped it up at Del Mar with the Eddie Reed, a good addition there, with a 12-horse betting race to close the weekend. Jeff, should be fantastic racing on the track. We've got the big day in Maryland, but of course, Saratoga, Del Mar on everybody's mind. Fun in the sun. We want to encourage everybody to enter that handicapping contest on Saturday. Just $25 entry fee, so get involved in the fun in the sun and take advantage of those hit and splits. We're giving away more than $30,000 of our cash, and this is the last weekend for the big hit and split promotions that have been going on all the way through July. So we still got some time to do some work, my friend.
Yeah, that hit and split promotion is the best we offer, I think. I mean, it gives you a chance to not only win some money, but get some money on top of what you've already earned, and that's always welcome. But we look at this card and these races, and by the way, I'll obviously be handicapping all of these races for Express Bet, both at Del Mar and at Saratoga for both Saturday and Sunday, as I do every racing day. I can tell you, though, that there's going to be an amazing maiden race out here at Del Mar. Bob Baffert's got a colt who's already worked 111 flat from the gate, a 2-year-old first-time starter. Bob didn't run any 2-year-olds in Santa Anita. I know John Sadler's got a bunch of them. There's some very high-priced, fast-working 2-year-olds. And I know Saratoga's got some monster 2-year-old maiden races as well. So it's great racing. Stars of tomorrow and the stars of today. What a weekend we've got coming up this week.
Be sure to send it in with First Bet on the app and at ExpressBet mobile and at expressbet.com. Again, handicapping tournament players, you can only play at expressbet.com. Get involved with the fun in the sun, also some other handicapping tournaments. Check out the tourney page at expressbet.com for all of that. Jeff and I will be back to review what happened over the weekend each Tuesday on It's Official. But between now and then, good luck at the races. Saratoga, Del Mar, Maryland Jockey Club, Gulfstream Park, and much more going on this weekend. Enjoy it, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
We're ready for the start. They're off.